Every single day, another British family quietly liquidates everything they own, packs 2 suitcases, and boards a one-way flight to America. And the psychological pattern behind this silent stampede is uglier and stranger than anything your local news will ever admit. Stay right with us, because what you're about to hear will completely rewire how you see home, forever, no exceptions. I've come back to the UK and it's boring. That's the first thing out of her mouth, barely off the plane. My ancestors will not like me for saying this, but there are things America does that are better than the UK, another one admits, almost guilty about it. I don't really know what I was expecting to feel, but when we landed and we were driving through the familiar streets of where I'm from, I didn't feel like it was home. I didn't feel like I was home. I just felt like it was familiar. And then there's the one crying at the gate, the one everyone in the comments recognizes instantly. I'm flying back to the UK and I just can't stop crying. I don't want to go. I had such an amazing trip and met so many amazing people. I felt so loved. I'm obviously with my mom and it felt so good and I don't want to leave. Did you know that every single day, thousands of Brits are quietly selling their homes, draining their savings accounts, and buying one-way tickets to America with absolutely zero intention of ever coming back? Forget the romantic postcards of the ancient land of fog and royal pride. The bitter reality is that the 15 largest cities in the United Kingdom, from glamorous London all the way down to Birmingham, Manchester, and Liverpool, are living through an unprecedented Great Escape. Cities that were once a source of national pride are now drowning in debt. The NHS is collapsing in real time. The gloomy weather never lifts. It took a World Cup soaked in warmth and grandeur on American soil for the English to finally admit their own homeland had quietly become a dreary survival trap. It's time to wake up from the dreary British dream and confront the shocking truth. The English are fleeing these 15 cities for America, simultaneously, and never looking back. London has never once admitted it's a trap. This city has always known exactly how to drape itself in that glittering coat labelled Global Financial Centre, a badge of prestige, an upper-class fantasy. But for the young tech crowd grinding through their 20s, that coat has become a suffocatingly tight straitjacket. Let's run the actual numbers. In Zone 2 and Zone 3, rent is silently devouring more than 60% of a highly skilled engineer's after-tax income. Worse, between 1997 and 2024, the ratio of house prices to average income in the UK ballooned by 2.1 times over. Owning a home before 40 now sounds like science fiction. You grind 70 hours a week. You hand over every steep progressive tax bracket demands. And what do you get back? A tube ticket that keeps climbing in price, endless strikes, and a damp shoebox flat you can barely stretch your arms in. The dream of London's Silicon Roundabout didn't die from a lack of ideas. It died because the cost of living quietly ate the last penny of the entire creative class. And so they looked west, toward Austin, Texas. The gap between these two worlds isn't built on empty promises. It's cold, hard financial arithmetic. Texas runs a flat personal income tax rate of 0%. The exact same money that barely squeezes you into a cramped one-bedroom rental in London hands you the keys to a detached villa with a garden and a private pool in Austin. This isn't just a real estate upgrade, it's a full cultural shock. That release of financial pressure, combined with sheer physical space to breathe, has triggered a quiet wave of defections. British techies are messaging each other, inviting one another over to Austin one by one, a domino effect slowly draining the country's brightest minds. They left, and almost none of them looked back. A system that prides itself on cultivating top-tier intellectuals, only to trap them in a lifelong struggle just to accumulate anything. Does that system still have the right to demand loyalty? Have we been naive enough to believe the label global hub could somehow refill a wallet hollowed out by taxes and fees. London can wring out your personal finances, sure. But if you think that's the peak of disappointment, the UK's second largest city delivers an even harsher wake-up call. The complete, total bankruptcy of an entire city government. 41.7%. That's the share of households living below the poverty line in Birmingham, officially the UK's second biggest city. A number that alone shatters the entire illusion of prosperity. When the City Council filed its Section 114 notice back in September 2023, that wasn't just paperwork. That was an official confession of insolvency. An equal pay debt of £760 million, stacked on top of a £375 million deficit, has turned Birmingham into a slowly sinking ship. Street lights are switched off to save on the electric bill. Trash piles up on the pavement with nobody left to collect it. Community centres are quietly sold off piece by piece. And yet, almost cruelly, council tax keeps climbing to the maximum allowed. Paying more for less, a strange bargain that only English residents seem forced to accept. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Atlanta, Georgia operates on a completely different logic. As headquarters to a whole cluster of Fortune 500 companies, Atlanta channels its abundant budget straight back into infrastructure, sprawling parks, a modern transit network, and a functioning welfare system. People leaving Birmingham for Atlanta aren't chasing luxury. They're chasing something far more basic. A government that doesn't treat its citizens' wallets as a shock absorber for its own failures. Do you accept paying, year after year, into a governance machine that has already stopped functioning? Or is it finally time to admit that the dream of the old industrial age has truly failed? Drop your take in the comments below. But remember, losing money to a bankrupt government isn't even the cruelest part of this story. The next factor is quietly robbing you of something you can never buy back: your health. Picture this. You wake up. Outside the window, it's raining. You commute to work in the rain. You ride the train home to the sound of rain hitting the glass. And that exact scene repeats itself for 139 days out of every single year. That's not a line from some dystopian screenplay. That's simply daily life in Manchester. People love to praise Manchester as the economic engine of the North, but they conveniently leave out the psychological toll. Record low sunshine hours, combined with year-round humidity, create the textbook environment for seasonal affective disorder, SAD. The exhaustion in Manchester isn't only about job pressure or the cost of living. It seeps in through every single drizzle that drags on week after week, quietly draining the life force out of even the wealthiest residents in the city. Miami, Florida, lands like a direct counterpunch to that worn-down patience. It's no coincidence that the migration wave from Manchester to South Florida has exploded in recent years. People move to Miami to reclaim exactly what British weather stole from them: year-round sunshine, salt air, and a buzzing, sun-soaked service and tourism economy. This isn't just a change of postcode. It's a full lifestyle reversal, from enduring a grey sky to waking up to sunshine every single day. Is toughing out brutal weather really some admirable trait? Or is it just a polite excuse dressed up for having no other option? If you had to choose between 139 days of miserable drizzle and 300 days of warm sunshine, what exactly is still keeping you there? But if you think Manchester's endless rain sounds bad, brace yourself for the next stop, up in northern Scotland, where winter doesn't just drag on, it quietly shortens the lifespan of an entire generation. 7.5 million patients. That's the record-breaking scale of the specialist treatment waiting list on Britain's National Health Service. Of those, roughly 3 million are forced to wait beyond the supposed 18-week standard, leaving thousands of patients every single day stuck on stretchers lining hospital corridors. But in Glasgow, in the north of Scotland, that number isn't just medical pressure anymore, it's a death sentence. Glasgow has long carried a grim, well-documented record. Its average life expectancy has consistently sat among the lowest anywhere in the United Kingdom. The devastating legacy of deindustrialization left behind a stagnant economy, layered on top of a punishing northern winter and a chronic lack of sunlight. The immune systems and bone health of the elderly are quietly wrecked, while chronic disease rates keep climbing. Living in Glasgow means facing a brutal 1-2 punch. The cold slowly eats away at your physical condition, while a completely overwhelmed public healthcare system stands paralyzed, unable to catch you. And then, like a rebirth, the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona, appears. More than 300 sunny days a year, paired with a dry desert climate, make Phoenix a near-perfect natural remedy for respiratory and skeletal health. And it's not just the weather. Phoenix is also home to some of the country's top super hospital medical chains and a booming semiconductor manufacturing sector. The migration from Glasgow to Phoenix has nothing to do with chasing luxury. It's instinct, a refusal to keep gambling with your own lifespan inside a depleted healthcare system, in favor of a place where sunlight and proactive living can genuinely add years back onto your life. So, what's your take? Should we really be sacrificing our own long-term health just to stay loyal to a declining piece of land? Health and longevity are the foundation, sure, but when your lifelong passion for entertainment and sport is boxed in by decades-old infrastructure, the disappointment takes on a whole new shape. There's a bitter truth British fans quietly swallow after every World Cup or North American tour. The entertainment infrastructure back home has fallen at least half a century behind the rest of the world. Liverpool remains an eternal symbol of football and music, but behind that legendary glow sits a genuinely cramped reality. Ancient stadiums are wedged in among Victorian-era terraced houses. Transport links are permanently congested, and there's a total absence of modern, multi-purpose entertainment complexes. The local economy leans on low-value service jobs, which traps the entire fan experience inside outdated models. The love of sport here has been half-heartedly commercialized. Fans pay premium prices and get budget service in return. Las Vegas, Nevada is the polar opposite, completely redefining what commercialized entertainment can look like at the highest level. The rise of the billion-dollar Allegiant Stadium complex, alongside a wave of high-tech arenas, has turned Las Vegas into a genuine global sports capital. Here, a match isn't just 90 minutes on a pitch, it's an entire cultural ecosystem. Elite tournaments, cutting-edge sound and lighting technology, outdoor tailgate culture, and high-end hospitality layered on top. Young people trading Liverpool for Las Vegas aren't just landing high-paying jobs in event management, they're discovering a fully upgraded version of the exact sporting passion they grew up with. Have we gotten so lost in nostalgia that we've stopped noticing our own lived experience is being quietly rationed? Is loving sport really complete when you're paying premium money for a cramped, outdated product? Now, let's look straight at the numbers pulled from the government's own index of multiple deprivation. Blackpool is the single poorest locality in all of England. 40% of Blackpool's neighbourhoods rank among the poorest 10% in the entire country, and 7 out of the 10 most deprived neighbourhoods in all of England sit inside this one seaside town. The average weekly income here is just £459, 21% below the national standard. 13.9% of households live in energy poverty, while 22% of the population is crammed into deteriorating rental housing, HMOs. Once glorious seaside hotels have degraded into hubs of vice and unemployment. Blackpool is a perfect miniature of an urban poverty trap that authorities have quietly ignored for decades. Set that image of Blackpool's decline right next to San Diego, California, and it feels like staring at two entirely different planets. San Diego represents the absolute peak of the modern coastal economic model. A mild Mediterranean climate, meticulously maintained beaches, and a booming economy built on biotechnology and cutting-edge medical research. Higher income levels, combined with a genuinely civilized living environment, let San Diego residents fully recharge their own life force. The journey from Blackpool to San Diego isn't simply a change of address. It's a full-scale escape from the depths of neglect, a reclaiming of a life that actually feels human again. Escaping the shadow of the past has never been simple, especially when that past hangs over an entire city the way it does in Sunderland. Once the proud shipbuilding capital of Britain, Sunderland now lives among the ruins of its own former glory. The near-total disappearance of traditional manufacturing dealt a fatal blow to the local economy. Even though the car assembly plant still limps along, it can't come close to satisfying the demand for high-skilled work. The youth here face a brutal fork in the road: accept low-paying jobs with no path upward, or watch their own potential quietly erode inside crumbling infrastructure. This picture of a post-industrial city losing its footing in the digital age has sparked a slow but decisive brain drain. And the landing point for that fleeing young workforce is Charlotte, North Carolina. No longer a story of rusting shipyards, Charlotte flings open the door to the second largest banking and financial hub in the entire United States. A dizzying job growth rate inside multinational corporations, paired with genuinely green urban planning, builds a completely different kind of living environment. With home ownership costs that feel almost absurdly affordable by comparison, a young person moving from Sunderland to Charlotte doesn't just land a job. They leap up an entire tier of social class, trading industrial leftovers for a front-row seat in the global knowledge economy. 23.3%. That's the share of working-age adults locked out of the job market entirely in Middlesbrough, a record number that makes it the single most deprived local area in the country by the Multiple Deprivation Index. But poverty never travels alone. Prolonged unemployment has turned Middlesbrough into a hotspot for violent crime, theft, and deep social unrest. Daily life here has curdled into a string of tense, held-breath days, residents quietly fearing for their own safety and their children's. And cruelly, at the exact moment people need protection most, budget cuts have gutted the police force and community support services. Insecurity hangs over everything, quietly wrecking mental health and snuffing out any hope of a peaceful life. What's the actual value of safety when you're anxious every single time you step outside your own front door? What kind of future do our children really have when the entire environment around them is soaked in stagnation and decay? If there's one place in Britain where your birthplace alone decides your entire fate, it's Bradford. An official report from the Social Mobility Commission ranks Bradford among the very worst cities in England for social mobility. Children born into poor families here are practically imprisoned in disadvantage for generations on end. 2 out of every 5 children live in relative poverty. Even more brutally, the gap in life expectancy between the richest and poorest neighbourhoods within the very same city stretches up to 10 full years. Income lags badly because the local economy simply lacks high-skilled jobs, hardening into a rigid, stratified structure that chokes off any real ambition in the younger generation. Standing in stark contrast to that trap, Denver, Colorado runs like a machine built purely to generate opportunity on merit. Tucked at the foot of the towering Rocky Mountains, Denver boasts some of the highest social mobility and quality of life scores in the entire United States. A diverse economy is booming across technology, green energy, finance, and aviation. In Denver, your own drive and practical skill are the only currency that matters, not your background, not your family name. A dynamic, nature-immersed living environment lets residents maximize their own potential, instead of being boxed in by discriminatory barriers. Sitting among the 6 poorest local authorities in the entire United Kingdom, Kingston upon Hull is a casualty of geographic isolation and a dying maritime economy. More than half of all residential areas in Hull fall into the poorest 20% nationwide. The collapse of the traditional fishing and shipping trade, combined with its isolated position on the east coast, has turned Hull into a place investment simply forgot. The urban landscape is bleak, starved of any large-scale redevelopment, grinding down the entire pace of life. The young workforce is left with no real option but to linger in low-value, unskilled work, carrying that heavy feeling of being completely abandoned by the government in Westminster. Looking clear across the Pacific, Seattle, Washington stands as a mirror, reflecting a port city that actually pulled off the transformation. Starting from the exact same maritime economic roots, Seattle reinvented itself as the global technology headquarters for Amazon, Microsoft, and Boeing. Its booming knowledge economy delivers premium salaries and world-class benefits. Residents making the jump from Hull to Seattle find that same familiar coastal city rhythm, just operating at a completely different economic scale and quality of life. It's a journey out of isolation and straight into the epicenter of the knowledge economy. Back in November 2023, Nottingham officially filed its own Section 114 notice, another city in debt. And when the budget runs dry, what's the first thing sacrificed? Not official salaries, culture. Nottingham has thrown itself into brutal austerity, shuttering cultural venues, slashing all arts funding, and starving community libraries and museums of resources. A city once genuinely proud of its long heritage has gone stagnant and grey almost overnight. And ironically, council tax keeps climbing to its absolute ceiling. People are paying more to live inside a hollowed-out shell, where the creative class and young people alike have completely lost any space to actually grow. And they found their answer in Nashville, Tennessee, America's music city. The contrast here lands like a splash of cold water on outdated management thinking. Nashville runs a flat 0% personal income tax on wages, supercharging entrepreneurship and creativity. Here, culture isn't treated as some costly burden. It's a booming economic engine in its own right, blending art, entertainment, and finance seamlessly. Leaving behind a Nottingham that's selling off its own heritage just to pay down debt, the creative community is heading straight to Nashville to reclaim what real prosperity actually looks like. Coventry was once the beating heart of Britain's car industry, but that's ancient history now. Half a century has passed, and Coventry has completely lost its status as a manufacturing powerhouse. Post-war concrete architecture turned the city centre into a dull, cold slab of a place. A total lack of groundbreaking engineering projects funnels young engineers into painfully narrow career tracks. Manufacturing wages across the UK have fallen badly behind inflation, and everyday life here lacks anything resembling modern amenities. Sharp technical minds are left to slowly dull inside outdated workshops that haven't seen an upgrade in decades. Luton consistently tops the list of the worst places to live in the UK, a title nobody wants, but one it has fully earned. Sitting right outside London, Luton has morphed into a genuine satellite city, expensive, cramped, and pressure-cooked around the clock. House prices and rents have surged right alongside the capital's overflow demand. But what residents get in return is substandard public services, gridlock traffic, rising crime, and virtually zero green space. Luton residents are paying an absolutely exorbitant price just to bring home daily suffocation and chronic stress. A survival trap dressed up as a commuter town. Saying goodbye to Luton's grey monotony, Tampa Bay offers a year-round, sunny coastal lifestyle with sprawling infrastructure and genuinely modern city planning. Affordable real estate here lets a middle-class family own a spacious house with a private pool, something that reads as pure fantasy back in Luton. Florida's booming economy opens up countless business opportunities, letting migrants finally live instead of merely surviving. Portsmouth, Norfolk, and Virginia Beach, Virginia, breaking free of a cramped island city to reach the open sea. Portsmouth carries a genuinely brutal geographic feature. It's the only island city in England, and because it's an island, it simply cannot expand. The result is population density compressed to a suffocating level. The transport links to the mainland are perpetually jammed. As traditional naval power shrinks in scale, Portsmouth's economic momentum keeps stalling. Residents are boxed into cramped, industrial-era terraced houses with genuinely no room to raise a family or improve their quality of life. That creeping sense of confinement, hemmed in on every side, pushes plenty of people to their absolute breaking point. Oxford, a name synonymous with the very peak of global intellect, hides a bitter reality behind all that academic prestige. The ratio of house prices to income in Oxford consistently ranks among the highest anywhere in England. Salaries for researchers and educators across the UK trail miserably behind the rising cost of living. PhD students, postdocs, and young professionals are squeezed into cramped rental rooms, completely unable to build any real wealth. A world-class academic reputation doesn't pay the electricity bill or the rent. A chronic shortage of research funding has turned Britain's intellectual elite into people who are rich in reputation but genuinely poor in real assets. And the American Athens, Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts, has been steadily draining Oxford's brightest minds. As the home base of Harvard, MIT, and the largest biotech ecosystem on the planet, Boston rewards its intellectuals with benefits to match. Enormous salaries, massive research funding, and flexible pathways to commercialize scientific breakthroughs let scientists chase their passion while building real financial security for their families. Leaving Oxford for Boston isn't a sacrifice. It's simply taking your knowledge somewhere that actually pays for its value. 15 cities, 15 exoduses. From London's tax trap to Birmingham's total collapse, to the brain drain quietly bleeding out of Oxford, this isn't natural migration. This is self-defense. When your tax money keeps pouring into a machine that no longer delivers safety, healthcare, or a decent home, loyalty curdles into meaningless resignation. People aren't leaving because they hate their homeland. They're leaving because they refuse to keep paying the price for a system in decline. Do you stay in a city for its actual quality of life, or purely out of habit? Between ancient prestige and a genuinely spacious, peaceful life, which one would you actually choose? Like this, if it reflects the reality you're living through right now. Share it with anyone, quietly weighing their own future between these two words. Subscribe and turn on notifications to keep following this conversation in the next breakdown. Please note, this content is economic and social commentary based on publicly available information, intended purely to spark open, civil discussion about urban governance and quality of life. It does not constitute immigration or investment advice, and it is not an attack on any individual, city, or organization. Personal experiences vary widely. This reflects one perspective among many, and viewers are encouraged to independently verify any figures or claims before drawing their own conclusions.